Redditors whose jobs require them to go into other people's houses, what is the weirdest shit you've seen? Not safe for work. Please do like, share, and subscribe. Delivered pizza to a house where I was greeted by a man and what I thought was a large dog, until it neighed at me and I realized it was one of those miniature horses. A woman who built an aluminum foil tent over her bed so they couldn't control her dreams or thoughts while she slept. I found out later that she'd been a member of the Branch Davidians. Went into a woman's house that had a life-size replica mannequin of herself mutilated and murdered. Turns out, she's a semi-pro actress. She's been an extra in dozen or so motion pictures, one of which was a B-level hack film. The special effects crew made a latex replica of her for a couple scenes in the movie and let her keep it afterwards. It was real looking. From a foot away, you'd think it was a real mutilated corpse. Creepy, but I can't blame her for wanting to keep it. Just recently had a client who was fairly normal on the outside, clean cut, steady factory job, decent car, etc. Inside his house, the roof was rotted through. There were holes in the floor, dead rodents in the kitchen cupboards, etc. The weirdest thing was that he kept talking about his wife, but it was abundantly clear that no one lives there with him. This guy had a completely normal life on the outside, but is definitely off. When I worked as a building inspector, we saw a house that had not paid their water bills and had their service disconnected, so naturally their solution was to get a bunch of big blue storage bins from Walmart, cut a hole in one end of the lid, and shit in those. They had 5 lined up in the living room. There was also 4 dead dogs in a closet. I puked for the rest of the day. We condemned the house. I shadowed a home health therapist once. We went to a house where we had to tuck our pants legs into our socks because of fleas. We drove down this dirt road, and I thought we were going past the abandoned single-wide trailers, but then we parked in front of one. The trailer didn't have steps to enter. You had to boost yourself up. The floor was rotten through to the ground in places, and there was a grandmother with 6 young kids in there, including the one we were seeing, who had hydrocephalus, but the mother never got it treated and neglected the child nearly to the point of death till Grandma found them and took the baby. Grandma was really trying her best, but this place was the most unsafe place I had ever seen. I, electrician, did a call where the family had a full-size 7 to 8 foot long pig living in their house, just chilling in a room right off of the living room. Another call where the older couple had very anatomically correct drawings of themselves on all of the walls. That was awkward. I was at a house for a cable TV service call. Customer wasn't home, so I called him. He said, "I will be home in 5 minutes, and don't freak out, but I have a tiger on the truck." When he got there, he had a tiger in a cage on the back of his truck. I got to pet the thing, feed it a little, and then went on to see his venomous snake collection, his hand grenade collection, and his hot sauce collection. The very next day, I was at another service call and asked the customer to get to the pole in the backyard, and he told me that he has a tiger in the backyard, so don't freak out. I got to pet the thing and feed it a little. I had been working cable for 18 years to that point and had never encountered a tiger in all that time. I had been working cable 7 years since and have had no further encounters with tigers in that time. But for 2 days consecutive, I visited homes with tigers. P.S. South Carolina. Vet Tech here. Went to an at-home euthanasia. The people were very wealthy. They had huge abstract art painting in the living room, probably 12 feet by 4 feet, that said, "I like putting my dick in anuses." Not too shocking, but just enough information where anyone in their living room might feel a little bit uncomfortable. I worked for a moving company, and we went into a lady's house and kept finding needles everywhere, behind the furniture, down on the couch and chair cushions. We stopped after a couple of minutes and refused to finish the job. Turns out her teenage daughter was a diabetic and would just toss the finger prick needles and syringes everywhere. She honestly didn't understand why we refused to touch the furniture after one of the guys carried some cushions and wound up with a needle stuck in his shirt. Ex-Geek Squad. One house I went to was a retirement home. The guy had to be in his 80s, had used condoms everywhere and women's underwear on the floor, had the biggest porn collection I've ever seen, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves 12 feet long of just porn. Wanted Hughes to set up one of the shitty 5.1 home theaters in a box thing. After we were done and left, he called and said there was an issue, so we begrudgingly went back, and it was just a ruse as he wanted to show us porn. Oh god, I have so many. The one that springs to mind first is the house where the firefighters already on scene pointed to the carpet and said, "Careful, there's poop on the floor," but I haven't seen evidence of pets. The whole place was bad. Then there was the old man whose only clean part of the house was a small portion of his bed where he slept. Everything else was covered with clutter and filth. I have no idea how food was made in his kitchen or how he used his bathroom to either bathe or shit. The bathroom was similarly covered with junk and filth. There wasn't a clean surface anywhere. Think about the ruins of buildings you see in post-apocalyptic video games like Fallout. Think about how dirty, stained, and cluttered those bathrooms and kitchens are. Then quadruple the amount of dirt and random junk in any given room so it covers every flat surface, and you're getting pretty close to this guy's house. I took pictures and filed a report with Adult Protective Services. This guy couldn't care for himself. It was really sad. My dad's business partners bought a home on our street after the lady who lived there passed away. She didn't have any living relatives. My dad was tasked with getting the place cleaned out and ready for contractors since we lived across the street. The woman who passed was always a nice lady, and we'd often go hang out with her on her porch, where she taught my sister and I to knit. We were never invited inside and never really asked to be. At my age, I didn't really think anything of it. Anywho, my dad was really excited to show us the place, but kept a secret what was so crazy about it. We walked in to find out she was a hoarder. The entire house was filled with 6-foot-tall piles of junk, save for the walking paths through each room, which were actually quite neat, and the bathroom, which only had a pile as tall as the toilet seat. What was strange is that it didn't even smell much at all. I've seen hoarding TV shows, and they always noted the horrible stench. It definitely didn't smell good, but all the junk was basically brand new things still wrapped up in their packaging or their store bags. It seems she just had a shopping addiction, but was still a neat lady. Working as a locksmith. Get called to rekey house. Talk to client before I show up. She seems like a completely normal lady. I show up. We talk for a moment outside. Completely normal house from all looks. She's an RN. 0 warning signs. She goes to open the door and let me in and starts acting sheepish. She starts apologizing and says something like, "Excuse the mess." The door can't open all the way. There's 3 to 4 feet of trash everywhere. Not hoarding boxes or collecting weird stuff, but just garbage. Rotting stuff, piss, shit, piles of it. There's a 9-inch wide walkway through the garbage that's 6 inches deep of compressed garbage, to-go boxes, fast food bags, magazines, you name it. She goes in, walks through to the living room, sits down on a couch that can't be seen, garbage everywhere. A cat appears out of nowhere and sits on her lap lovingly. She seems for all practical purposes like a completely normal, functioning adult. I looked it up. It's some weird form of the hoarding condition, but just rotting waste. She seemed so normal. I did the job and left. Felt bad for her. Still kinda freaks me out. Like there's no way you're guessing this nice nurse lady is actually a garbage troll. I did home hospice nursing for a few months. You'd be surprised how cluttered and dirty even homes in nice neighborhoods can be. I had one house I went to, the patient had vomited all over the carpet hours before. The family member said they didn't clean it up yet because they were waiting for someone to bring them carpet cleaner. So they laid a towel over the vomit, piles and chunks. Mind you, this carpet was matted and stained all over. It didn't need specialty cleaner. They could have used any cleaning product that they had on hand, and it would have been better than waiting hours. Ugh. Approximately 70-year-old woman fell in her trailer and injured her hip or femur, but was able to drag herself to a couch and climb onto it. Unfortunately, due to her injury, she was unable to walk. Plus, the trailer was a disgusting hoarder situation with clutter everywhere, so navigation was already difficult. She sat on the couch in the same spot for approximately 10 days until a neighbor called 911. When we arrived, she was naked and covered in 10 days worth of feces and urine and was physically stuck to the couch. The worst parts were that the rats that also lived in her trailer had eaten 2 toes on the left foot down to the bone and approximately half of her right foot. She had such bad neuropathy that she said she could feel the pressure of them chewing, but no significant pain, and was unable to kick them off. On top of that, she had several sores on her inner upper thighs, along with a skin tear on her right forearm that had live maggots in them. We had to peel her off of the couch, which caused a large portion of skin to slog off as it was dead decaying after soaking in urine for a prolonged period of time. I've never smelled anything worse than when we broke that seal. The crazy part is that she had a phone near but didn't want to call 911 because she didn't want to spend all day in the hospital. The neighbor that called had been coming over and giving her food and water, but didn't call us for 10 days since. She said she didn't want us to. It didn't seem that bad at the time. I still have a hard time processing it all, but this is just one of many. Not weird, but really, really sad. Had to go check an apartment because we'd had a tip that there could be moisture damage. The apartment belonged to a retired older man, and apparently when he had a nurse visit him at home, they had made the report to building maintenance. When we got to the bathroom, me and my partner saw something that haunts me to this day. The ceiling was black, the walls were black, everything was covered in a solid black wall of mold. The man living there had no sense of what it was or what it meant. That mold had to have been growing for quite a while, and I have no idea how long he had lived there breathing it in without no one even coming to visit to see and report it. I have no idea what happened to the apartment or the resident, but I'm sure the bathroom had to be fully made anew, and I'm hoping the man is living somewhere safer. My husband's experience relayed to me. He was renting a small 2-bedroom apartment with his now ex-wife. His sister came to stay with them for a while, trying to get on her feet and get into school, work, etc. After a heavy storm, the landlord came to check on the apartment and went into the basement. It was completely flooded with several feet of water. He said there was no way the storm did that and found that there was a burst pipe as well coming from the bathroom. Turns out the sister was flushing those wet wipes down the toilet and it finally overloaded it. They found her closet full with wet wipes, used, hundreds. She never showered apparently, just wiped down with wipes, piled them in the closet or tried to flush them. When I worked in pest control, I went to a house that called us for roach problem. Shocking. As soon as I entered the home, I knew it was going to be bad. The smell nearly knocked me down. I had to make an excuse to go back to the truck right away just to take a breath. I returned with my mask on. Inside the house was the mother and 3 small children. The smell was something that I really hadn't smelled before, and in this business, you smell a lot. The house was dirty, but not in the hoarding way at first glance, just basically a typical house that was obviously run by the kids and lazy parents. Kitchen was dirty, looked like about a week's worth of dishes piled up, and scraps of food on the counters, but still nothing explained the smell. As I started up to the attic, the little girl ran by my ladder, started to pull down her pants, and she ran to her room. I looked away, but she left her door open. As I climbed into the attic, I noticed she was squatting and taking a crap in the middle of her room. After she left, I looked in her room and saw piles of human feces all around her room dried up. I checked the other kids' bedrooms and found the same thing. The mom didn't even bother to clean up, knowing that she had an appointment with me. I made some excuse to schedule another follow-up later. I left. Before I even left the driveway, I called Child Protective Service. Where to start? During my plumbing apprenticeship, I worked in North London for the local authority. Our job was to go into houses and update their boilers to new high-efficiency boilers. One home was a top-floor flat, and we were told in advance that the guy who lived there went by the nickname of Birdman. He was called this because he left his windows open year-round, allowing all the pigeons to roost in his place. On approach via the stairway, you could smell the ammonia from the bird shit. By the time we got to the door, we were gagging and called the job off. The local council had to call in deep cleaners in hazmat suits to clean the place before any work would go ahead. Another place a guy lived who I'm pretty sure had some mental health issues. When we got in, he had broken computer parts covering every single square inch of the floor. He said that he wanted us to remove our boots to work there, but we flat out refused on health and safety grounds. Whilst we were there, he spent most of his time on the phone calling local zoos, asking what they did with their spare porcupines. He was calling because he wanted to eat them. When they refused, he accused them of being racist, as he claimed to be from Africa and it was a delicacy for him. He was a white guy with a North London accent. Not saying he couldn't have been born in Africa and emigrated, but it sounded made up. Last was a very friendly family, but their place was a mess. When we got in, they offered us tea, which we politely declined. When we got into the kitchen, there were dirty cups and plates stacked head high and a decomposing fish on the floor. It was gross. The worst part was having to get in the bedrooms. One room, which was barely big enough for one adult, had 3 adult men staying in. It smelled of old mildew and sweat. When one of the guys got up out of bed to give us the room, his toenails were so long that they made a tapping noise on the laminate floor, kind of like the velociraptors in Jurassic Park. I'm not sharing this to make fun of any of these people. They were clearly living close to or on the poverty line. If anything, I think these types of people need more help from society, better mental health resources, more living space, and just general wellness checks could all help these people. Clever girl. Not my story, but my wife's. She was what amounts to a very well-degreed social worker. Her job was to do in-home assessments on people with mental health issues. She has lots of stories of filthy homes, but she had one client that she visited, and the house was absolutely disgusting. Spoiled food and garbage everywhere. Unimaginable smells. Clearly the client did not clean. My wife noticed they had small, open sores all over her ankles and wrist. She was super concerned of picking up bed bugs at the time, as one of her coworkers had that happen. She noticed a tiny bug crawling on her slacks, tried to brush it off, then immediately completed the assessment. She ran to her car, took off her pants and shoes in the parking lot, tossed them into the trunk, and got into the driver's seat and called me. We left her car outside in sub-freezing temps for a few days. Afterward, she found out it wasn't bed bugs, but fleas. The place was infested with fleas.